Hello, and thanks for joining the Walt Weekly. We're going to dedicate this episode to the results of the 2024 election and try to address some of the comments that I've seen and some of the disappointments that I've seen and we all have seen. And it did not meet expectations, actually. But we'd like to talk about it and try to assess what we need to do going forward. That's the goal of this show. What do we need to do going forward as Black Americans in the United States of America? And I have with us our co-host, Ernest A. Robinson, and of course me, I'm Walter Latham Sr. Ernest, I am disappointed. I am surprised. I was caught off guard by the sheer magnitude of Donald Trump's win over Kamala.
Yeah.
I am surprised. Not a lot of our people are surprised. But how do you think, from your viewpoint, how do you think we should handle this? Because I got some stats I want to go through, and I'm going to walk through them with the audience and yourself, of course. How should we handle this going forward?
So, I mean, yes, it's disappointing. It's disheartening. We're beside ourselves, we're bewildered, and everything else that may constitute a negative or a state of confusion based upon these particular results. But how should a person, or how should we kind of view it? I mean, that's a loaded question, because I think there's so many different aspects of it. I think let's just say just on the surface level right now, because I know we'll get a little deeper a little bit later. Part of it becomes, our involvement from the very beginning, and not just from the beginning of her campaign, because her campaign was only 170 days. I think people have to kind of put that into context. She didn't run an entire campaign, or for a year, or for 2 years. So let's do it. Say that. But
even Pelosi agrees with that.
Right.
It took too long to vacate or make a decision on how she's going to move forward. But go ahead.
So you touched on that part, right? So I was going to try to not get too deep into that, because what I was going to say was that people just need to be involved from the very beginning in voter education, voter mobilization, voter registration, right? That's first and foremost.
Right. Okay.
People have to be engaged more than just a rally, more than just one particular vote. People need to vote in the primaries, special elections, as well as the general election, each and every single year. Considering that you did touch on the fact that, Joe Biden made a decision, one is not solely entirely up to him, right? It's whatever pressure they can put on to convince him, not to run. It's also the DNC and everyone else suppressing others from running because they
What do you mean by that now?
Well, oftentimes, so I don't know if you recall back, I think in the 2012, was it 2012? No, 2016. Yeah. No, 2016.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We had Martin O'Malley, former governor of Maryland, was a candidate, in addition to Bernie Sanders, in addition to, I think there was one or two other prior governors or elected officials who were running during 2016. But oftentimes what they would do is they would suppress one over the other. And then so they would, a lot of times they didn't allow for anyone to emerge. They did not do a primary to allow for another candidate to be elected prior to, which there was enough time prior to the Democratic National Convention. And so that's what I mean by that, is by not allowing for there to be an open election for an open seat, they just kind of dubbed Kamala or Vice President Harris as the heir apparent.
Well, see, that's what I have to give Pelosi credit, though, but she did say that if we had primary elections, if we had the opportunity to run primary elections, then we could, see where Kamala stands. I'm on it. That's looking in the past. You know what I mean?
That's what we're doing.
Still may have come out as he won, right?
Yeah, no, man, but But that's what I mean, at this particular point in time, when we're talking about how we felt, what could we have done, what was happening, that's what we're doing. We have to look back and evaluate what that process was, because ultimately whatever that process was did lead to the outcomes that we have, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as you know, regardless of how intentional and or hasty a decision was made, it's imperative that we actually evaluate it for what it's worth, to in order for us to being able to then construct best practices. Like, how should we move forward if we're ever faced with another situation like this? Was this the best way for us to not have a primary? Because we could have had, and that's what special elections are for, and they are short fused. Unfortunately, we've had elected officials who have perished, have gone on, and there's a vacancy. Well, that vacancy can't stay vacant if there's not an election. It's in a senatorial race. Those Senate seats are 6 years, right? So if someone were to perish within their first year, you can't keep it vacant just because we don't, for whatever reason, right? And then on the contrast, if there's only a year left, you still can't leave the seat vacant, or shouldn't leave the seat vacant. And therefore, there will be a short fuse special election that will serve as the quote unquote primary. So that way it's open. Then there will be if there's a between the Democrat, the Republican, and or whomever, if there was a third party that received enough votes, then that will be that will be the end of that special election for that particular seat. That seat will be filled, and then that candidate, that elected official, will then run during the open seat. But that's the part of being involved and understanding the process in its entirety, and that's I think one of the things that we can definitely sharpen up on.
Well, no, with any and you got to look at a campaign as a project, as a project manager. I don't care how successful my project was. So it could be $10, $20 million. It went in on time, met customer expectations, and that type of thing, the certain criteria that we set for success, right? We still do a look back. We still do a lessons learned. So I understand perfectly where you are coming from, regardless of whether she had won. We would still need to do a look back to see what could we have done better.
Right.
Okay. So I'm sure that the Democratic Party in a state of shock right now. They were rocked. And it just took me by surprise with the various groups that went for Trump. Even younger people went for Trump. All right? Now, I'm going to drill down on some numbers specifically soon. I saw things, Ernest, that I was so surprised, looking at the social media and how women, I don't think they represent our Black women, but a lot of them say they off men for a while. They don't want to see men anymore. I think that was just shock. Okay, they don't want to deal with men. They're going to go without men. They were really pissed. And the same thing applies to Latinos. They don't want to do this and they want to do that. But I think that's just a knee-jerk reaction to their pain. You know what I'm saying? So I got some details that I was even surprised at, man. I'm really surprised. I'm not devastated. Okay. I mean, the market was good to me this week. You know what I mean? So, they got that Trump bump, they call it, right? It was good to me. But we have to come to terms with, number one, the man won. Okay. Number two, we have to turn inwards. We can't blame the Latinos. We can't blame the white women. We can't blame the 1 in 5 Black men that voted for Trump. We can't blame them. Okay? I don't know about that last part, though, the latter, when the Black men voted for Trump. But everybody votes their issues, and I do not see how this guy won. He almost had a landslide. Because the people that voted for Joe Biden, a lot of them went for Trump this time.
Yeah.
So how do we, as Black Americans, we are a monolith in a sense. We're like a silo. All right. And I think that the best thing that we can do going forward is to turn inwards to our community, to us. We can't depend on the Latinos, the white women, this and that. This is something we've been pushing a long term, Ernest. We have to come together as one. If we don't, you're going to see what's happening. That's just the
Yeah, but
beginning.
I don't think there's a singular definition for us or for Black people. I think in most other cultures have a sense of origin, a sense of collectiveness. And it's not to say that it doesn't exist within the Black community. I'm just saying this in what you're speaking to, it obviously is not there. And we've seen
That's right.
we've already seen it on 3 separate occasions, to include the first Trump win, the first Trump loss, and then the second Trump win victory for the White House. And we can go back and we can look at those numbers, where those numbers increased over each of those iterations.
Right.
And I think there's also two. Well, I think one of the things we talked about off the air was about the value, and one of my two things are the first number one thing is honesty. And I think when it comes down to elections and how people vote, I think there's a lack of honesty. And despite the number of felonies, despite the crude, rude, abusive behaviors of the president-elect, there's an aspect of honesty, if I would to use that so loosely, in his things that he talks about. He doesn't like a person. He wants to punch a person. He wants to, cause destruction or whatever. He has no problem in saying that. And people, for whatever reason, whether they're vicariously living through that, his lack of inhibitions to voice whatever he likes, some people are drawn to that. Other people are.
Don't you think, though, Ernest, before you proceed, Trump has normalized dishonesty. He has normalized dishonesty. The people that voted for him overwhelmingly accept the fact that he's dishonest, he's a liar.
Yes.
They know that.
Yes.
Okay. So it's being normalized in this country.
Right, but hold on before you finish it. Right, but finish it. But the thing is that we can't attribute that he normalized it. Society, America, by a majority, has normalized it. He didn't necessarily normalize it. He was his way the whole time. Had we disavowed, any allegiance to that, we condemned it from the very beginning. We never allowed it to give any credit or any credence into it. It wouldn't have won.
Martyrdom in in case of Trump, his supporters looked at this conviction, that conviction, this and that, all these type of complaints and charges against him as he's a martyr. So that's the way they interpret it. A lot of them interpreted that this man is a martyr.
Yeah. But there's also been a lot of conflation, right? I mean, he compared himself to Dr. King. He compares himself to Abraham Lincoln. He tries to find any great leader that has done significant things within this country, and then somehow try to align himself. In addition to that, simultaneously on the other side of his neck, align himself with Hitler and and whatchamacallit, gosh, from Silence of the Lamb.
I know who you're talking about, Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, that his character,
played,
but
yeah.
But yeah, so it's just. I don't know. But I definitely wanted let's get to the numbers and see what that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about some numbers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some numbers. I got them right here. All right. And this is coming from Politico. Okay. All right. Now, Donald Trump won 1/5 of the Black men in the 2024 election. This means that 20% of all Black men that voted for Trump in the election, that's 1 in 5, 20%.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Hispanics, which the Democrats normally get, the Hispanics voted for 42%. That's up over 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. That's up. All his things, all the demographics that he came short on, he expanded.
Yes.
On top of his base, he brought in a lot of people. Now let's
Yeah.
talk about. Now I gave you the Hispanics, 42% of Hispanic voters. All right. According to the exit poll, 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump in 2024.
Yeah.
50%. Now, pushing that abortion issue and those type of things, which they thought, and it was a miscalculation, but I would have thought that too, that, women would want to protect their ability to control their own bodies. But apparently, white women are going along with the program. It was just, it was a disappointment. But those are the numbers right now. And on top of that, Trump won the popular vote. The popular vote.
Yeah.
All right.
How,
Besides,
how many black women voted for Trump?
how many?
Yes.
86%. Somewhere around that number. I didn't even check, but I can check again.
86% voted for him or voted against him?
No, voted for him. It was up around 90 something. I can pull it later, but fact check me on that. It's around 90%.
No, that's 90%. That's 90% that voted for Kamala, not voted for Trump. Black women. I said black. How many black women?
Right. Voted for Trump. It got to be less than 10%.
Yeah. I think it was like between 3 and 5%.
Yeah, less than 10.
Yeah, less than 10%.
All right. I knew that it was a majority of black women, so I really didn't drill down to the numbers on them because,
yeah, I know.
They were Kamala. So I looked at the other demographics.
But I think so. I mean, and I think we have to, because I think with there's been a heightened level of sensitivity around the outcome of this election, and I would not want to demonize a particular demographic because each and every vote counted, right? In addition, I should have done this, and I apologize to you and to the viewers for not, our listeners as well, for not doing this. The numbers of how many people did not vote.
They were down over 2020.
Right. So that's right, because that was a huge issue. It was a huge issue in 2016, and then I think we probably did have an slight increase in 2020, but then obviously we're seeing that it's down this time around as well. And
yes,
I think it's important to kind of evaluate, like, well, why are people not voting? And I think, and then this is where part of the honesty comes in at, right? It's okay, well, how did the candidates were chosen? What's going on? Like, I mean, some of the rallies, I mean, they had Meg Thee Stallion at one of the rallies.
Yeah.
They had, I don't know what her name is, Sexy Red or something like that, where
yeah.
Even when she was performing one of her songs, which she could have performed something else that was a little bit more appropriate, they had to edit like half of the song. I mean, just the marketing, the presentation just kind of faltered in certain areas. And it just, and that turns voters off. And sometimes it only takes, just the same ways that it takes one thing for somebody to become inspired. People become inspired by a word, a song, a note, a hug, a smile, something. And other people can also be turned off just as easily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, but all of those things I think are contributing factors that we have to take into account. We can't just sit there and say, well, yeah, this person is a 34th time. I mean, at the end of the day, Donald Trump shouldn't probably never been a presidential candidate when he was toying around with the idea back in 2011. But that's when he became a Republican.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, so we're
and it came out despite.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for president. For President Obama at the time, and so, like I said, I think there's going to be some real soul searching. I think that we all have to do, but I think that there's a lot that we have. I mean, it is a lot to kind of unpack, and I think to try to do it in a way of priority. Like, okay, well, what should we have done here? because everything in life, I think there's a 90-10 rule.
Oh,
That
yeah,
I
of
have.
course. We got the name. Yes, absolutely.
And it's in life.
But explain it to our audience what that
Yeah.
90-10 rule is.
So life is 10% of the decisions that you make, 90% reacting to that 10%. That's my 90-10 rule. Is that we spend the decisions that we make in life are 10% of the entire of our life. 90% of our lives are spent reacting to the decisions that we made. That goes for debt, past relationships, job opportunities, college, doesn't matter what situation, because there are certain decisions that we made prior to that put us in a situation where we couldn't pay our bills, where we couldn't do this, where we couldn't do that. And then we have to live with. So in context of or bringing that, tying that together, right? And when it comes to our governance, the fact that we allowed for the Tea Party to organize. I mean, the Republicans have been organizing ever since President Obama, sworn into office. Where the first day,
the Tea Party emerged from that.
Yeah, Tea Party emerged from that, and Mitch McConnell's first thing was our objective is to create a barrier, or create a barrier for this president, and our job is to make him a one-term president. Since that time, that was the focus of the organizing for the Republican Party. Now, granted, it is transformed into something that we do not even associate really with our semblance of the GOP or Republican Party, to where now we have MAGA, which in a sense I believe probably could be its own party. But that's we have to go like that far back, because that's the reaction. So when we had President Obama, they did, and then 2016, instead of running Joe Biden, they suppressed him out and say, hey, no, worry about your son just passed, whatever have you. So he didn't run. He would have been the absolute favorite. The absolute favorite. Economy was doing well. Most of the positions would have stayed the same. And Donald Trump being the TV guy, or whatever the case may be, at that time, not being taken seriously, Joe Biden would have been the more serious, more moderate candidate at that time to being able to win. They didn't do it. Then when Bernie Sanders had his influx, they suppressed him and didn't allow for him to actually become the nominee. He had more supporters than everything else. So you had that. Then you fast forward. Now you put Joe Biden into the race, and things happen as we all matriculate through life. And by 2024, you allowed for him so much grace. But then you also got to remember, in 2020, when Kamala was running for president, she dropped out of the race because she did not have the support. She didn't have the donor support at that time. She did not have voting support at that time. And then in 2024, in 2020, you just automatically just insert her as the VP.
So now, Ernest, one thing here, I do want to pivot a little bit, right, to issues that would appeal to those demographics that turn to Trump.
Okay.
First off, at the top is immigration.
Okay.
Now, I do want to say, and I've said this from 2000, when I first started this podcast back in 2019, okay, I did an episode on immigration.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I was more focused on the Indian diaspora in terms of them taking jobs over here and us, outsourcing over there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at immigration now, and you look at it from a Latino or Hispanic perspective, they have not been through or suffered the way we have in their home countries. They left their home country because there was no opportunity, not because of racism or anything like that. I may excuse Brazil. Brazil may be an exception, but let's look at immigration. I believe, and I'm going to say this, is that the more the population is diluted, because when I was growing up, there's only black and white. The more the population is diluted, the less your share. So if you take and buy 100 shares of GM stock, and they only issue 200. Effectively, you got 50% of General Motors, right?
Yeah.
But, okay, it got 50%. So I see immigration as a dilution of the pie, of the American apple pie. There can only be so many portions. Okay. So based on that, just
mm-hmm.
one second. Let me just get this across. Based on that, we are really stupid to believe that bringing in immigrants is going to increase our power or help us into it. When they come over here, a lot of immigrants, they vote for the Republicans because they don't have the same experiences as we do. So we cannot rely on Hispanics, Latinos, Chinese. We can't rely on them to support the path that we are on to try to bring equality and equal opportunity to everyone. We cannot rely on them for that. And they're taking too much of the pie. Okay? They're taking too much of the pie. So that was one issue that I agreed. I don't agree with sending people back and all that kind of stuff. That's extreme. But I do agree with putting a check on the border, that X amount in every year, and that's it. Because when Trump alluded to the fact that they're taking black jobs, no, they're taking more of our piece of the pie. They're diluting our piece of the pie. That's what they are doing.
Well, one,
that's my position.
I got you. So you can't. Well, no one should say piece of the pie without necessarily identifying what piece that it actually is, because that saying a piece
of
the pie.
I'm talking about the economic piece. I am talking to economic. I'm talking economics.
No, I get that. I get that part.
I'm talking basic economics.
Yeah,
basic opportunities.
Well, see, here's right, but see, economics, opportunity. What does that really mean, and what does that look like? Because so when Trump says black, so Matthew, let me back this up. I don't believe that immigration is a dilution. I believe it is an enhancement on the actual true fabric of what America is. America is with the exception of those who are native to this land that were here prior to someone discovering it, right?
Well, they voted for Trump.
No, so I got it. But what I'm saying is this whole land, with the exception of those that are native to this land, are all immigrants. No, I got it. But so hold on. But so what I'm saying is that moving forward into today, the immigrants who, and as a matter of fact, there are probably, there's an unaccounted for number of immigrants from all over this world who fly into this country, who come on ship in this country, either some type of vessel that makes its way over to the ship on visas and other types of visitations to the United States, and wind up staying in the United States. They are not necessarily demonized or criminalized as much as those who are quote unquote coming across the border. Now, there are quite a number in droves that have come over the border, but most of the jobs that they do, one, they are employed by some of the same Republicans or business individuals who have farms, who are farming watermelons and strawberries and oranges and
to go get their crops in.
Right. So the thing is that they're adding value to the economy, because in order for us to be able to get food on our table, some of the things that we enjoy, some of the stores that we go to and I get our lattes and with the special drizzles and all this other stuff, these factory workers that are work in many of these areas, those immigrants are the ones who are coming in, busting their butt to your point, right, to find a better life. Now, in fact, there are some who are coming from many of these countries, namely El Salvador, but many other countries who are faced with persecution and or violence. And so therefore that's the reason why they're able to seek asylum in a legal manner. So coming across the border itself, when seeking asylum, is actually a legal
I
a legal way.
understand that, Ernest.
Right.
I'm sure that our audience understands that, Ernest. I understand. But what I am saying is, and I'll repeat this. I mean, you have, for instance, you have Latinos that don't like that was their main issue was immigration. They don't like the fact that the borders are open and everybody's coming across. And that's how they came across. They want to block that. I mean, I I am not, my best friend in life is Latino. Okay. I am I love those people. I love people. Now I don't mean to say those people, but I love people. Okay. But to get back to, being a pragmatist, because I pride myself on being pragmatic. Okay. And if you look at it, like I said, the analogy that I made earlier is that they're taking more and more. They're going to be the second largest minority in 2050.
Yeah, but first of
that
all,
tops us.
Yeah, but
So
I heard about that when I was 12 or 13 years old, staying in New York. Yeah. That was that's been 20 some years in the making. And at the end of the day too, if we're I mean I think we're kind of digressing a little bit from the topic.
We are digressing. We are digressing.
Yeah.
We are. Can't help it though. We got to step out there a little bit.
Yeah. But I think that it's only been a value add. I'll use one of your terms because economically speaking, for the groceries to get to where they need to, for clothes to be produced, for things to be done the way that they've been done, none of those things would have necessarily been done without the immigrants who wanted to work hard and take those jobs. It keeps the world going round. It keeps our world, wherever we are in our class and station, it keeps the things the way that we enjoy, the things that we enjoy, going.
So basically what you're saying is you don't want America to be another Japan, because Japan is in a situation where they don't have the people to do the jobs. All right? Because they have a closed society. They're not open to immigration.
Right.
Okay? You can go there and work, but
they're an island, so it's kind of hard to
it's like 1.5 babies. Right.
Yeah, it's an island. Exactly. You can't just cross.
And some European countries. Yeah, some European countries,
Yeah.
I understand and I appreciate what you're saying, Ernest. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pivot to the issues. Why would they
vote against it?
Why?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people, again, they just kind of live vicariously through it. And then I think I mentioned this is probably a long time ago. There's 3 people that come into your life. There's people who are against what you are against, right? They're not for you or for what you're for, but they're just against whatever you're against. Then there are people who are for what you are for. They may not be for you or against what you're against. They're just for what you are for. This is how these alliances
go. Right.
So that's how these alliances occur. I don't necessarily really care about you personally, your thing, whatever it can be, but if you're against this, then you can join with me. And so to answer your question, that's how these things come about. They come about because there is a singular common issue that we're rallying around. And with individuals who may not be as informed about policies, about governance, and especially when you're coming from a different style of government and you're coming here, you're like, well, this is better, and they're against this, and they're going to support this for me, so that's what I'm going to vote on. When you have first time voters, most people are voting just because someone told me to and I needed to go vote. They don't have any issues. They just maybe happen to vote, whether Democrat, whether Republican or whatever, but they're voting just because. a lot of times people
All
are
right, I
not
want to
as,
stay.
huh?
I want to stay on the topic of Latinos, just like you're doing.
Okay.
Okay, but I do want to ask you one question. The Supreme Court struck down a law. Joe Biden wanted to give citizenship to spouses of Americans.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, citizenship. They don't have citizenship or anything like that, no legitimacy, but they're
Mm-hmm.
married to an American.
Yep.
All right, so the Supreme Court struck that down and said, no, you can't. All right, they are eligible for deportation just like everybody else. So 500,000 spouses
Mm-hmm.
of Americans are up to be deported, will
Yep.
be deported.
Yep.
Okay, so they
Yep.
shot themselves in the foot. Okay, so I'm just going to sit back and look at them and say, okay, you asked for it, you got it. Just like all these other people that voted for President-elect Trump.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you asked for, and that's what you're going to get.
And the hypocrisy, because that's exactly how President-elect Trump's wife got her citizenship. So the contradiction and the hypocritical actions. But again, that's what happens when, and again, whether it's Latinos or anyone, and people are around a singular issue, whether you're for what I'm for or you're against what I'm against, but you really do not care. You're not for the person. When these alliances come, we should be about the people, right? And then that's how we have to it wind up compromising. But yes, to your point, that's what happened. They were around this singular issue, not realizing that they're not for them. They were against what they were against, and that was it. And so now that they won, they don't care about you. They cared about that singular issue. Now that singular issue has been brought to the table, and now they're able to move forward. And I think
With the
one saying
Republicans,
that about the Supreme Court, real quick, is I think an illustration of kind of a prelude to what the next 4 years, potentially 8 years, or however long that life is going to be, because they have majority of the Supreme Court, they have majority in the House, they have majority in the Senate, and
right.
they have it's a Republican White House. And
they got a ticket to ride.
Yes. And so it's going to be an interesting time in America.
Yeah, I'd like to see all of these promises that were made. And I did this thing on credibility. I did a short clip on credibility, the lack of that Trump has. And I just want to see all these promises he made. I want to see what happens. Okay. I tell you one thing. Here's a tip. Now, I normally don't give out stock tips, but if you listen to the podcast, go out and buy airline stocks. All right, because they're going to ship 20-some million people back to their countries. That's going to take a lot of money. All right, and they're going to spend a lot of money sending those people back. So buy airline stocks if you are listening to this podcast. All right, but you try to figure out which one they're going to use. All right, now let's switch over to, I was looking at the what do you call the table, the family table issues. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears that the number one issue was immigration. Next one was crime.
Mm-hmm.
And then inflation. So I think inflation was number one or two. It depends on the survey that was taken.
Right.
But there's nothing about abortion was like one of those issues down the line, maybe 4 or 5 on the list
Right.
of priorities for people. So
I mean that makes sense though. Because most people don't sit around the table talking about abortion.
No, nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not yeah. But
I'm not talking to my daughter or my sons about abortion at the dinner table. Yeah, it's not an everyday conversation. But I get
we're
it.
We're not literally speaking. We're not literally talking. Well, you know what I'm saying.
I know what the data is inferring. But I'm just saying, just in general, the reason why it wouldn't necessarily arise to that, because that's not a typical conversation that are had amongst families. it is, and to the point of the advocacy for abortion, it is a very much a private conversation, right? One
Oh yeah,
where
yeah, 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 yeah.
there's a level of embarrassment, etc. So, but yeah, no. But to your point, yes, no, 1, 2, and 3, and that being maybe 4 or 5, potentially 6 in some areas. Saying not the highest ticket item.
Well, I tell you, the women in this country, black women, are very, very hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like to, and that's why I'm doing this show, to try to lay out things with you and myself, and give our perspective based on the
Mm-hmm.
so-called facts. Okay, that they are not alone. All right, we understand your grief, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to get over it now. The guys are going to be the next president. And what I recommend, and this is for Black Americans, is we have to turn inward. We have to come together as a collective, even though we don't have a country that we originated from per se, because we can't go home because we don't know where we came from on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got regions, like I'm 25% Nigerian, 24% Ghanaian. I got a lot in there, but this is our country. Our blood runs in the soil of this country.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not want to hear anybody say that they're going to leave this country to go somewhere else. Because what would your ancestors that died and suffered, the slaves, our ancestors, what would they say if we left this country? No, it's not going to happen.
Right.
We born here, we die here, our blood is in the soil, so ergo, that's the way it's going to be. Okay? So I want to tell anybody out there that thinks in any way, form, shape, or form that we are going to go somewhere. We're 57 million strong. Some people say 47. I'm adding 10 because they always undercount us.
Yeah.
All right? And we're the 8th largest spending bloc in the world. 8th.
Yeah.
The money we spend.
Yeah.
All right? So we have power in numbers. Okay? So I want to tell my sisters, don't be disappointed. Everybody takes a step back, and as Ernest indicated, you do a lessons learned. You look at it. Oh, where did we go wrong here? How can we tighten this up? How can we tighten that up? All right? Who do we trust and who do we not trust? Can we put faith in this group or not? You shouldn't be putting faith in any other group but ours. That's where your faith is. And then we got some renegades out there, that 20% that of black men that voted for Trump. Maybe you're making over $400,000, because if you look at it, and just look at it in pure, and totally logically, take a guy like Elon Musk, worth $270 billion. For a tax cut for him, this guy is saving 50, 25, 30, $40 billion. So for him, Trump being the president saved him $50 billion in taxes. All right? And now he's going to be the guy to tell us to cut back, because he's going to run this country like he does a corporation. And you know what corporations, they just call you in and say, look, this is the way it is. Sorry. That's your budget.
Yeah.
There's no compassion. There's no empathy. But to circle back to our black women, I just want y'all guys to know that we will be all right. Thing is, focus, all right? Pursue. Get your businesses. Get your education. It's going to be another round. Our time will come. Just be patient and do what you got to do, though. We have to show up a lot of things in our community. We got to show them up. Okay? So that's enough of my preaching here. Sometimes I do go off on a tangent, all right? But it's coming from my heart, okay? And I want black women to know. And another thing, I want our black men to know. We have to protect our black women. If you don't do anything else, you got to protect your black women. Because those are your mothers, sisters, aunts. You have to protect them. Okay?
So I'm actually I'm a little conflicted.
That's it for today.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm conflicted by how, why it's viewed as an attack. Because granted, yes, I think that Kamala could have been supported more. But I think that if any other candidate treated in real time, right, it's treated equally. Well, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. I have never seen in large numbers where white men has said we need to protect our white women when Hillary lost. I've never seen that.
No, they don't have the same. They don't have the same history as we do.
No. I mean, no.
There are
That's
hundreds
that
of
part
thousands
is
of black women missing every year.
no. Here's the thing, and that's what I'm saying. I don't want to conflate actual danger, whether it's IPV or intimate partner violence, SA, any domestic violence, human trafficking, abuse in any particular way. I don't want that to be conflated with a loss in an election. I mean, I have two daughters. I have a mother. I have a host of female cousins. I absolutely, we should do everything that we can to protect our black women and women in general, but just our black women more specifically. But a loss in an election, it's not an abuse or an infraction where a protection is needed, and I don't want, so no one should feel threatened in that manner, because it's not the same. I don't want us to conflate that. Again, attacks on social media, things of that nature. Yes, we can put barriers in place to be able to do that. But if you're an equal, where you're going up against an opponent and you lose, that's not a direct attack on black women.
I didn't interpret it as that.
No, I didn't say you did. I'm not saying that you did. I'm not saying. So sometimes I may rebut something that you're saying because but I'm just saying, because this is a general consensus. Like, you're not the first person to say that, or I've seen even on television where, we have people who are LPCs and PhDs and are saying that, that they feel attacked. And I think you had alluded to earlier where they're like, well, we're not going to mess with black men. We're not going to mess with Latino men. We're not going to. And it's like, that's not the same.
Well, I don't think it's productive to do that. I don't think so.
Yeah.
We got, don't forget, you got that what's that guy? What's that military general?
General Milley?
No, the Chinese guy from way back in the day, in the BCs, the military strategists that y'all guys learn in officer training school.
Oh, yeah.
Strategist, the one. I can't remember his name now.
I got you. We'll go ahead.
I copy his book to both my kids, right?
Okay.
All right, and one of the things that he uses is, divide and conquer. All right. And we got to be very careful on how we look at our own, because they made a vote for this guy for reasons that we don't know.
Right.
But we cannot divide our own people based on who they voted for. We can't.
Right.
That's just the way it is. We're unique. We are unique. The African Americans are unique in this world. Okay. So we can't afford to, disenfranchise or just not include or just ignore or leave out, whatever term you want to use, the brothers that voted for Trump. We need them. Even though, if there's something happens that, we have to go against the, I don't know how to put this, but I'm trying to stay on a narrow line here.
I got
to walk a tightrope.
Yeah.
All right. So, I don't think that we should be, ready to say, oh, we're not going to, love our men and we hate this, blah, blah, blah. We can't afford to do it as Africans.
Yeah.
It plays into that narrative, divide and conquer. So we have to be very careful.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. So in closing, Ernest, what kind words can you find for what happened on election day?
I mean, what I will sit there and say is voter education, voter mobilization, voter registration. I would also encourage those that are within, whether black females, black males, I would say within your community, help somebody become a representative. Like, understand what the process is and insert yourself wherever that you may see fit. We need, it may be grand to run for president and Congress and everything else, but we need, all politics are local. So whether it's your school board, your city council, if you have a chief administrative officer in the city, or you have a strong mayor, board of supervisors, any of those judges, district attorneys, we need heads of hospitals, the chief administrative officers for hospitals, CMOs. We need on every level, be involved. Do not, take whatever time to grieve the moment, but get back to work. Make sure that if you're retired, support somebody going to a young person going to college that may be pursuing political science. Figure out ways of being able to create apprenticeship programs or work experience programs within on political things, and learn how to write a bill, like a bill proposal. So that way we're going to advocate constantly, continuously for this. Understand that this is just not a moment in time. I think there was one thing that was important. One of my staff members said that they weren't going to vote. And I said I had seen a commercial. There were young people that were on there. It had to be no more than 9, 10, no more than 12 years of age. And they were saying that I can't vote, right? What happens in this election is going to affect me before I'm even able to vote. So, and this is more addressing to those who decided not to vote this time, those who are so upset where they're saying they're not going to ever vote again, those who want to try to disappear into, just kind of into the ether and just kind of focus on their own families and everything else. These problems do not run away, and these are things that we're going to end up passing on to our children and our children's children. If we look at right now the makeup of the Supreme Court, where they can nominate potentially 2 to 4 more justices just based upon Alito and Thomas retiring, and then Sotomayor, and I think there may be one other justice that may be within their 70s, that Supreme Court will be the same Supreme Court potentially for the next 30 years. And so
that's very true.
Right. Yeah. And so it is imperative that we, again, grieve the moment, dust ourselves off, and then get back into it and then stay in it. That's all I got.
Okay. I do want to end with, these things happen. You have a setback, but you have to be strong. You have to be resilient. All right. So, the best thing I can say to our people is that we had a setback, but we're used to having setbacks. All right. As my mom used to tell me, you take one step back to take 2 steps forward. It will work out. All right. What we need to do is focus on ourselves for a change. Okay. And we got to stop crying so much too. Just put your head down and do the work. I'm not saying we don't work, but we have to. You had say you got to learn how to write a bill. I say you got to learn how to write a business plan. Okay. We have to get financially situated in such a way that we can exude some power. We have some influence. We have it. As I said, we're the 8th largest economy spending wise in the world.
Yes.
That is power. All right. And we have to turn towards that. This reminds me, I know I've spoken about it before when I met Stokely Carmichael in Conakry, Guinea, and we had a long discussion. And the first thing after his election, I thought about what he told me. He said, we need our own space. He was a separatist till he died. Mm-hmm. Give us Texas, give us Florida, give us California, or this and that. And I told him, man, we can't do that. We don't have money. How are we going to mount a offense without money? We need weapons in this. We're broke. They said, yeah, you're right, but we have to do it. So when this election, the following morning, I didn't stay up to watch all the returns. I like to come in the next day and he was the first person I thought about. He was absolutely, I'm not going to say correct, but I'm close to saying he was right. Okay, I'm close to saying that Stokely Carmichael was right when he said that we need our own. Okay, so I'm gonna end with that. And if y'all guys have any comments, put them in the comment section. And that's my position. And we're gonna be all right. God bless everybody. All right, I'm very interested. It's gonna be a very exciting period in the next 4 years as to what occurs. So I look at it as something new coming down the pike. So they go do this, they go do that. So let's see how they govern. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah.
And another thing, that text that came out yesterday asking people to report for cotton picking and all this kind of stuff. Some people say it was a foreign government. They don't know where it came from. They don't blah, 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 blah. It was a coordinated attack. That's what I believe. And and these messages going to our kids.
Yeah.
All right? They're going to our kids, our daughters and sons. It's not, hey, that's just to me, that's a red flag. And we just have to be on the alert and know that nobody's going to take care of us but us. I don't take handouts from anybody. I don't want anybody's money. I make my own. And we all have to be the same way. We can't depend on the government for nothing. We never should have anyway. All right? But we're put into a position where we had to survive. So with that said, I want everybody to say the 23rd Psalm, because that's what I said. Keep doing what you're doing, but just have more focus, have more determination, and be diligent. That's all I can say. And that's from the Walt Weekly. Okay. So thank you, Ernest. As usual, you are a man in Washington. And we defer to you for things like this. So we're very fortunate that you are in the Walt Weekly.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sir.
All right. It's tomorrow. So happy birthday to the Marine Corps, 249 years.
Excellent. Excellent.